And we're live. Welcome to the latest Fujitsu Hangout. I'm Tony Hallett. I'll be your host today. I'll be introducing today's subject, which is all around the digital workforce and digital workplace and what the future of that entails. And more importantly, I'll be introducing today's guests. So with me today from all parts of the world, we're joined by Fujitsu expert, Stafford Bond.
Hi guys.
Hi Stafford. Then Chief Envisaging Officer from Microsoft, we have Dave Cobden.
Hey everyone.
Hi Dave. And also we have business psychologist and author Tony Crabb. Hi Tony.
Hi guys.
Hi Tony. So this is a really big subject, the future of the digital workplace. Stafford, let me come to you first. Can you paint a picture for us? What are some of the big trends in business and technology which are influencing this?
So I think we all were aware of the consumerization of IT. That's a big trend playing in the workplace at the moment. I think the other major trend is around sort of the generational or demographic implications in terms of you've got multiple generations now in the workplace. So you've got to deliver workplace services that meet all of their requirements, whether you're sort of at the end of your career or just beginning your career. And I think there's a whole raft of things around the proliferation of digital and the IoT, the Internet of Things. And it's really around how do we harness all of these advancements in technologies to provide a service that best meets the sort of challenges that we're seeing in industry, be that driving down a cost base or, as I say, around the demographic implications.
Okay, that's interesting. Lots of points there. Tony, let me come to you. One of your books, at least, is called Busy, How to Thrive in a World of Too Much. What's the implication of this world of too much on all of our lives, and especially our working lives, and how we collaborate and try and be productive?
Well, I mean, the knowledge of the complete knowledge of the world used to double every 100 years. IBM recently calculated that in a couple of years, the complete knowledge of the world will double every 11 hours. Now, facing this kind of deluge of information, we're overloaded. We know that stress is on the rise. We know that people experience being busier. We know that people feel they have no time for the things that really matters for them. And that's all right. But at the same time, I think it has a huge impact on how we are at work. So the World Economic Forum recently identified what are going to be the skills that are most important in 2020. And paraphrasing, they basically said complex problem solving, creative thinking, and relationships. Now, if you look at the way our kind of overwhelm affects all of those, because I come at this as a psychologist, our overwhelm damages our ability in all of those areas. So we know people are more distracted than ever before. Typically, every 3 minutes, people hopscotch between activities. We know that organizations and people feel this incredible pressure to be productive. And actually, since the mid-80s, the amount that we're all producing in terms of content has increased 200 times. And also, we also know that people are more connected to other people and yet more isolated and alone than ever before. And all those things actually fundamentally affect the way we are in organizations and the way we get things done.
Okay, and just to pick up on a couple of things there, it sounds like some of the language and some of the metrics we use aren't the real ways of measuring what's useful. So the amount of knowledge, is it really knowledge, or is that just the amount of data that's been created? Similarly, the amount we're connected, is it a meaningful connection with other people?
Well personally, I think that we've talked about being in the information age for a long time. I actually think we've left the information age now. I think actually information is so ubiquitous, it's almost losing its value. I think what's much more important isn't so much the amount of stuff out there, our data, it's how things get joined together. So the Nomura Institute talk about that we've now entered the creative era because the only source of competitive advantage is the ability of organizations to harness all this stuff, but actually to make novel and useful connections for people. So I actually think the metrics are wrong. I mean, Dave can talk a lot about productivity as well because I know he's doing research in this area. But I actually think we're still stuck in relatively industrial age mentality about the way we use humans. And the one study in, I can't remember which American universities, said actually the biggest blocker to progress now isn't processing power of computers, it's the attention of the humans that use them.
Okay, well, let me come to you, Dave. What do you say to some of Tony's points? Hard to disagree with some of that, surely.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think Tony's, he's bang on the money, because what we're dealing with here is we have a 19th century approach to productivity, which is really about thinking about productivity in terms of the process of work. So the measure is defined by output per unit of input. And in a digital society, actually the way we work changes. And when we're left thinking about a measure that is focused on the process of work, all of the transformation that becomes possible as a result of our digital society gets left by the wayside, because we want to work like we're Victorians. It's just we want to use the technology to make it a bit quicker or a bit cheaper. The thing that we have to do, and then this speaks to the issues that Tony and Stafford have already tabled, is our digital society affords us not just a different way to work, but a different way to live too, a different way to connect, a different way to communicate with each other. And we've got to start figuring out what those new ways are, and then throwing away the baggage of our Victorian heritage, because that's when we start to enjoy the benefit.
Okay, Stafford, let me come back to you and ask more specifically now. How are the people leading technology, and think of people like CIOs, people you speak to very often, how are they seeing this future? Because there are plenty of progressive CIOs out there now. Are they seeing it? I'm sure not in 19th century industrial terms. Tell us about that.
Well, I think you say there's plenty of progressive CIOs out there. I think there are, but I think there's still some that are sort of grappling with the old role, if that makes sense. And I see the danger most of the CIOs, or what's keeping them up at night that I liaise with, really they're going to become obsolete if they don't change their ways. And I think we're seeing a proliferation of shadow IT, where you've got businesses that you can go out and buy all this, whether it's through Amazon, Google, or whatever. You can buy technology through the internet very easily with your credit card. So I think the CIO now face are around listening to drive making sure they can sort of avoid the shadow IT sort of scenario. But on the flip side, because of now the proliferation of connected devices, sharing information, there's a whole security angle that they need to sort of get to grips with. And then obviously there's the cost angles as well. So I think I feel for CIOs, because they really have to grapple with those three elements, which is around cost, which are already sort of accountable for, the security, because they can't have the sort of damage to their organisation of having any security leaks, and you've seen hundreds of those sort of out in the news recently. But they need to make sure they can sort of take advantage of the newer technologies out there in order to provide that agility and the technology that the business is looking for.
Okay. So Dave, let me come to you, and maybe then bridge back to Tony. I'm going to try and polarise this a little bit, and say that we're hearing some quite fundamental things around cost, security, productivity, things we've heard in technology circles for a long time. And Tony, as well, as talks about the whole meaning of all of this. Why do we communicate? Why do we do anything together? How can you bridge those two sides of the equation as well? Dave?
Yeah, well, I think we've got to start thinking a little bit differently, certainly to where IT has come from in the past, right? We've got to get out of this command and control mentality. We should actually be celebrating a world where people, broadly speaking, are empowered with a richer experience of technology in their personal lives than they're allowed to in their professional lives. So the fact that one of your business units has gone out there and bought some shadow IT, as much as it's a pain in the backside initially because you've got to manage that, you should actually see what's underneath that. These are people who are engaged with technology for the first time ever. You've got customers who actually care about what the technology is going to do. And so your challenge is, how do you empower those people to be successful, but without sacrificing all of the hard-won lessons about the past, all of the resilience, the disaster recovery, the security, the blah, blah, blah. All that stuff is important, but you've got to strike that balance. But fundamentally see it as a great thing that people now, for the first time ever, they care about what technology can do for them.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say I totally agree with that. I think it is getting that balance, and I think that's a key, you said, Dave, it's getting the balance between stifling innovation and stuff like that, but also and I don't want to say maintaining the control, but not having security breaches and stuff like that. And it really is about getting that balance, and that's why I think the job of the CIO is quite challenging these days.
Okay. Tony, when we've spoken before about this, there was a point that came up around. So this goes beyond the CIO, obviously. It's other departments. It's everyone. And there's a comment around, for example, take a subject like flexible working, which has been around for a while now. People got to see it as a perk in some companies. But if I'm hearing everyone else correctly here, it's just see it as an opportunity for the business.
Well, I mean, yeah. Flexible working has been clearly, our technology enables incredible flexibility in terms of the way we live and integrate work in our lives. And yet an awful lot of projects around working flexibly don't necessarily work as well as they could do. They don't really deliver the business benefits as well as the personal benefits they could. And part of the challenge there is, I think sometimes we say we want our people to be more agile, more engaged with this stuff. And Dave makes a really important point about, isn't it cool that people we should celebrate when people do get involved in technology. But sometimes the conversation's wrong. Sometimes it feels like the tail wagging the dog, that it's about technology driven stuff as opposed to what are we trying to achieve in the business. So I'm going to embarrass Dave here by giving a Microsoft example, but I think one of the organizations that I know that did it really well is the Microsoft office in the Netherlands. They actually, when they said we want to do flexible working, they didn't talk about technology at all, really, as a starting point. What they said is, they gave the strategic message, this is about enabling a new world of work, which is a vision for our competitors. And then they made it really clear behaviorally what that shift was. It's about no time and no place. It doesn't matter where you work. And they did some really simple stuff. And I think when people understand the why, and understand the behavioral shift that's required of them, actually people get excited about new technology. But sometimes we don't spend enough effort getting the right leadership involved and making the strong enough connection to the business strategy. And so therefore it's just technology, which is just stuff.
Then let me put something to all of you as well, building on that. With new generations coming into the workforce, will that naturally change?
Can I jump in there?
Yeah, Tony.
Tony. You go first.
Go on. It's interesting because, I mean, okay, I think we over talk about millennials and stuff, and there are just people, and there are statistical differences which matter. But I do think there's something about we've got a generation here who weren't allowed to play outside. So actually, they're growing up. Their place that they could be free was in the virtual world. Their first relationships were really built in the virtual world. They've never been lost because they've grown up with GPS around them. And so, whereas I think sometimes we talk about users, technological users, because actually that's a kind of Generation X term where we think about technology as being tools, whereas I think some of the younger generations are just it's gonna be, technology is the way they live. My son, I was describing growing up to my son recently, a world without computers, etc. And he turned around after a while and said, Dad, were the toilets when you were growing up? Because for him, that kind of technology and, it's so central to his life. It's no more odd to think of a world without toilets as it is to think about a world without internet. And I think that fundamentally changes the way people engage with technology.
Okay. Stafford?
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I was going to say technology or IT is becoming a bit like a commodity in terms of the same as your utilities, your water, your electricity. It just is expected to be on, expected to work. And I think the generations coming into the workforce, I think if they get an easier life, so to speak, they will be more willing to share information or share their personal data so they can get services on demand, be it based on their location, their likes and dislikes. And I believe that technology will move more into the background and it will start sort of acting on our behalf, and the next generation will just embrace that because they're brought up with it, as Tony was saying. So I think it will have a shift, but I think the next generation will definitely shift towards sort of more sharing information and getting that personalised service.
Okay. Dave, let me come to you. Let's get a bit more practical as well about what CIOs can do in the face of some of these challenges. How do you see things?
Well, I think you've got to go back to what the original remit was for the CIO and the IT department, which was to enable the business to be successful. And I think we've got to find a way of helping them do that. I think one of the greatest trends, and you're seeing this play across things that we make, like Windows 10 and Office 365, where this is a consumer world. So the technology you use at work should be as cool as functional as sort of facilitating as the stuff that you use outside of work. But you want to be able to do that within a framework of enterprise resilience and all that kind of great stuff. So I think it really is for the CIO to get back about what does it take for me to enable the rest of the business to be successful? How do I facilitate their success? And I think if you've got a CIO who's thinking in those terms, you're already in the right kind of frame of reference to get the technology in the right place, which, as Tony quite rightly says, is at the bottom of all of this. It's probably the least most important challenge that your business faces today. You've got to get your people in the right place, you've got to connect them to the purpose of what you do, and then the technology will make short work of the rest. Okay,
and so is this a cultural change we're trying to enable process?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the sort of the paradox for me, is that you will never see the benefit of all of the incredible things technology enables unless you've equipped the culture of your organization to look for it, or to challenge it, or to see it, or to make it better. So you only make this stuff successful when you have that culture in the right place. And that's back again to Tony's point, which is you have to see this stuff as a strategic operational opportunity rather than an employee perk or an HR initiative. It's something that benefits the entire organization.
But I do think, coming to your point, Dave, I think absolutely it's cultural. I think the organisations such as Microsoft with the Windows 10, Office 5 and all that sort of technology, I think they're actually making it easier for the CIO, because it is blurring that line between your home technology and sort of work. So I do believe that organisations are actually not leading the horse to water, but you're definitely helping the CIO to sort of blur those lines. But absolutely, it's cultural as well. You need to change the culture within the organisation.
And building on the cultural piece, I actually think if you think about the stuff that technology's made us really good at, the areas where our performance has massively improved over the last little while, we've become more machine-like. So we've become much better at analyzing stuff, at producing stuff, at generating stuff. I actually think the next shift, and this is crystal ball gazing, but the next shift is to make us more human, to actually help technology to make us better at doing the things. So every organization I work with obsesses about how do we get people to collaborate, and they often look at technological solutions. I think put the camera forward 3 years, what organizations are going to obsess about is friendship. How do we get more friendship in our business? Because people collaborate when there's relationships, and there's some nice technology which is coming on stream, which is kind of connecting social media with geolocation, if you like, and GPS to help increase the number of real-world connections, the face-to-face meetings people are having. I think that's one of the ways that technology can really help us become more human and do the things that as humans we do really well, and that's really the role of technology.
So is it partly about technology going into the background a bit more, just being there, but we don't have to think about it quite so much?
Yeah. But I mean, it takes a... Sorry, Dave.
Yeah. I know this is a bunch of you guys. Dave, please.
All I was going to say, sorry, Tony, is that, and this has always been the case, the best technology is the technology you never see, right? If you have to spend a minute thinking about the tool rather than the task, I would argue we'd fail. So that's where I think stuff goes. Okay.
So I did want us to, look towards the future and maybe make a few bold predictions as well. There's no reason not to. So we've got this idea, Tony, if I'm hearing you correctly, about the big picture, about how we live our lives, the human connection. That's a really very optimistic future, and it's a very appealing future, I think, for a lot of individuals and organisations. What can you guys practically say that's going to help people get there? People watching this today, what's a useful way for them to think about this and to actually do some things? I put that to any of you who wants to volunteer first.
So I think I'll take the baton. So personally, I think there's a whole raft of things you've spoken about there, so it's difficult to cover all of them. But if I look back at some Gartner studies and stuff like that, they talked about a thing called Sync Me, Sync Me, See Me, Know Me, Be Me, which is really around sync all your data and all your sort of important information into the cloud, see me, see where I've been on the internet and in real world, and actually then start providing information based on my location, based on my likes and dislikes. I think ultimately, know me is understand you as an individual based on what you online, what you do in your personal life or whatever. And eventually you're going to get to be me, and that's where I think we're heading towards, where you'll have technology and computers in the background acting on your behalf. And I think I've given you a sort of scenario at times, but you'll be driving your car, the service will come on the car, and then what it will do is in the background automatically connect to your local, say, Audi dealership, book your car in, put that entry into your calendar, put it into your wife's calendar, whatever like that. So you start actually not having done anything, just driving your car. All of the technology background understands your local, where you live, where you're located, all of the various bits about you, and books you in automatically. And I think more and more, that's quite a simple example, but I think more and more we will see technology in the background act on behalf of the individual based on the specific rules or likes or dislikes or things it's learnt about you as an individual, a bit like AI.
I'm just impressed you're going to be driving your own car, Stafford. I think you obviously.
Well, I'm going to get Google to give me a car to drive. I'll have a driver.
I just think it shows you must have a very nice car you enjoy driving. I'm looking forward to having my car drive me, but it's not such a nice car.
But aside, when you start looking into a lot of these new innovative organisations, where it's virtual reality, augmented reality, humanoids, whatever else it is, they are all being bought by the big organisations like Facebook, like Google. So it is a very interesting. You've got the driverless cars from Google. They've bought another company called Boston. I think they're called Boston Dynamics. Boston Dynamics, I think. Yeah, which is a big sort of humanoid, makes robots. You've then got Facebook buying a number of organisations that create virtual reality to try and blur the lines between reality and virtual reality in humans' lives. So I think it's a real interesting future / slightly scary.
The mix of the AI with the human involvement. We're seeing this with the Facebook, the M service with the sort of next generation messaging as well. Not quite exactly dealing with human or robotic. It's very interesting, that future. Dave, let me come to you as well, the same question. Where do you see things going?
Oh, well, we have Windows 10 in answer to that. I'm kidding.
Yes. Of course.
I don't want to see technology. I want to see what it empowers people to do. And if I look at every sort of development, every fiber within Microsoft, where we're going as a company, and all right, you can argue how explicitly you see it, but that's the goal, right? Our goal is to empower every single person on the planet to achieve more out of their lives. And I know that can be really trite if you want it to be, but it's not a bad goal to have. And I think, now that we've got a society that's broadly getting in the right place, both in work and outside of work, now it's about creating the tools, the platforms that enable them to make the use of the innovation, be they driverless cars or blended reality with things like HoloLens, whatever it may be. But again, our job is, as well as moving the technology forward, we have a duty of care as an industry to move the individuals forward too. We need to help them understand the capability of these incredible new tools and platforms such that they can make the best of humanity, right? And make the best of what they do there.
Great. And Tony, please give us a kind of a summing up, but generally optimistic?
Well, look, I'm a huge optimist. I mean, we just got to recognise that the scale of change over the last 20 years on fundamental psychological processes is unknown in history. So we can't evolve in that time. We have to be intentional about how we adapt to some of this stuff. To Stafford's example earlier about having getting in the car and all this stuff happen, and that's great. I guess the question I'd ask organisations to think about: freeing up that time to do what? What are we trying to create the time to do? Because if all we do is we create all this automation around us, and we just leave people to fill it up, it'll just get filled up with more stuff. So we've got to be much more intentional about actually, I tend to find a way of dealing with this is better focus on what's really important and then allow the other stuff to squeeze in. If we think technology is going to free up our time and all of a sudden we're going to do some great work, the human brain doesn't work that way. We need to kind of figure out what's really important and obsess about that. I mean, but I am optimistic, because I think we'll come into this crunch where we've got more and more productive, and we're doing more and more stuff, and we're doing more and more of the stuff that in a few years' time will be able to be done by machines. So at a certain point, we're going to realize that, you know what, we add value as humans by doing complex problem solving, creative thinking, and empathy and relationships. And I think at a certain point, organizations are going to start obsessing about that and using technology to enable us to do that brilliantly. And I think that will happen. I think it's inevitable, and I think that's a really positive thing.
Tony, thank you very much for that big conclusion. This is a fascinating subject, and I think I'd love to carry this on with you all another time. For today, I'm going to have to say to our audience, please see the Fujitsu blog for more on this subject. Also, check out Microsoft for more on this subject too. And I can't leave us without saying also, please look up Tony's book on this subject. And of course, please give us direct feedback on today. For example, you can tweet at Fujitsu_UK to let us know your views and any other feedback. So please join us next time. And one more time, I just want to say a big thank you to Dave, Stafford, and Tony. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.